Hello, CST land. This is episode 408 of Cincinnati Soccer Talk. And tonight we get to talk about Cincinnati's big win over Toronto FC this past weekend as they took care of business on the pitch at TQL. But they turn their eyes now to Tigres down in Monterrey as that game gets kicked off tomorrow, late tomorrow night, I believe, 10:30 Eastern.
10:30.
So it's going to be a late one. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Cincinnati Soccer Talk. I'm your host. My name is Brian Biedenbach. I'm joined with a fantastic cast of characters. It's been fun to just rotate through here this early part of the season. So I'm going to welcome them in, and I'm going to start with you, Coach. Welcome back to Cincinnati Soccer Talk.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. It seems like I'm getting to come back here every week, which is nice since I'm not recording Talking Tactics weekly right now. So it's good to get to scratch that itch and talk to y'all.
Yeah, tell us before we introduce our other co-hosts, you did a different type of Talking Tactics this week. Tell us just a little bit about that and how that went and where people can find it.
Yeah, so I'm trying to release short videos explaining some tactical ideas, and it's ideas from games, but mostly generated from listener questions. So taking Patreon supporters' questions and turning them into little videos. I think they're on YouTube. I don't think they're out on socials yet, but we're going to cut some clips of those as well.
Yeah, they were fantastic. It was a fun little video. It's got some visuals to it, how people move and how the formations are set up and that. So check it out. It is on Patreon. There's a free tier of Patreon where I believe you can see those videos the coach is producing. And if you want to submit a question, that would be the place to do it. So, Coach, thanks for doing that. Nick, welcome back to the show, man. It's been a couple weeks. How you doing?
Doing good. Happy to have a win. Noticing in everybody's background, everybody has way cooler of a podcast background than I do. I feel like doing it in the spare room of my bedroom is not exactly living up to the background hype right now.
You just need a scarf or something hanging over back behind you is all you need, man.
There we go.
It's not going to take much. Yeah. Well, Nick, glad to have you back, man. Always good to have you. Jose is back is this your third or fourth episode?
I think so,
already?
Third one, yeah. Although it feels more because I've been also on Nacion FCC and then the one for Tigres that's based out of Houston. So I don't know. I've been in like 5 podcasts this year, which is way more than all the podcasts I've done in my life. So
you're catching up with the rest of us already. Well done.
Glad to be here. Coach, I did see your little clips. They were very good. And as Brian said, got little graphics there that really explains things. And Nick, as far as the background, I put this together like an hour ago, by the way, because this is my office. So I had to put we have this metal frame. I just hung him and it's okay. We're ready to go.
There you go. I think I need to get on that train. I used to have when I was doing hockey podcast, whole awesome big background set up in my office. But since that time, I've moved in with my now fiance, and it's a little bit more difficult to have a permanent soccer room when you're sharing space. So
yeah, not having it yet, is she? Come on, man, bring her along. Bring her along.
She's a season ticket holder this year for the first time, so she's coming along. She's becoming a diehard FCC.
Yeah, love it. Well, hey guys, before we get too deep in the show, we do want to thank our show sponsor, Apollo Home. FCC is heating up, and so is the beautiful springtime weather. Apollo Home is here to keep you CSTers cool with a $29 cooling tune-up. Make sure your AC is running at peak performance before the heat really kicks in. Schedule your tune-up today with Cincinnati's trusted home service experts. Call Apollo Home or book online at apollohome.com and stay cool all season long. All right, gentlemen, let's jump into some FCC news tonight. Before we get into the match, we want to talk about some things that are happening kind of around the periphery of FC Cincinnati that some's really exciting and some of it, I don't know, maybe it's a little alarming. So let's jump into that. Yuya Kubo, team of the match day. How about that for his 3-goal performance that 2 were called back for various reasons, right? Yuya Kubo on team of the match day. Nick, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I liked in general what I saw from Yuya Kubo. I think in terms of, finishing, he was the second best finisher so far this season. I love the energy that he plays with, especially in that attacking third. And I love his awareness to really find that open space on the field. In terms of this most recent game, the one thing that still sticks out to me about Yuya Kubo is there's a lot of just little tiny mistakes during the game. that seem to add up. A couple of missed passes, a couple of heavy touches, just seem to get him, off a little bit, that really kind of keep you from giving him an A+ grade in some of these games. But to me, he's still proven that he's a valuable piece on this team. And I think you saw it, that this past week when he's on, some of the good stuff he does really does help this team.
No doubt. For me, you said it. Kubo is a bit of a mixed bag for me in this game, because I think there were a lot of times where, heavy touches in the midfield, balls given away. The thing that I think Kubo still lacks is that final pass, is finding the runner coming through on the wing or splitting the, defenders in the midfield there. He struggles to do that, but I'll be honest, I'll take a Yuya Kubo that's putting the ball in the net 3 times a game and giving it up a couple times in the midfield. I thought he excelled up front there in the final third. At least, he was finishing. He was getting in the right spots. Again, 2 of them, for various reasons, were called back legitimately, most likely. 1 definitely so. But yeah, he's getting on the ball and he's getting to it in the attacking third. So I will take that. Jose, how about you? What do you think about Yuya Kubo's performance?
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better than Nick. I mean, it's again those little tiny mistakes there that can frustrate you. And I know that to be honest, I was losing my mind towards the end there with all those little mistakes. And there's a family of Argentinians that sat in the row beneath me who were also losing their minds. But there was this woman sitting next to me. I mean, she wasn't the regular season ticket holder, and apparently she loves Yuya Kubo. And she goes, "Oh no, but he's playing well." Said, yeah, but all these, and all of a sudden he scores. The real one that counted. Says, "Okay, I'll shut up now." Yeah, okay. But no, I couldn't have said it better than Nick. I mean, I think he played hard. It's that, again, that final 1/3 there that he's still just a little bit off.
He's not quite in midseason form yet, Coach.
Man, I will say Yuya Kubo, his superpower is his balance through contact and his ability to dribble and kind of have the ball being touched and stuff, and it stays with him. And when he is using that to drop into the half space and turn and dribble forward, he looks really good. He's always going to have heavy touches. He's always going to be inconsistent. But hey, he's an MLS player. If he was more consistent, he might not be an MLS player because he has that kind of raw tools. And what I love to see is the confidence. We saw him sting the palms of Sean Johnson early in the match, where Johnson, it was hit right at him, but he couldn't even catch it. He just punched it away. And then, of course, having 3 shots from that right channel that he put all of them on frame, and they all actually went in the goal. And when you have a guy that has the confidence to continue to shoot from distance, to continue to put shots on frame, he's going to draw attention, whether he's also having bad touches or not. So I think having him as a player who is going to be pushing guys like Orishano, hey, buddy, if you are not on the top of your game, I might get some starts. Guys like Corey Baird, maybe making Pat Noonan have to think about, do I continue with a different formation to get all this attacking talent? I think that's just a good thing.
Yeah, and pushing Luca Orishano, but even if not, like, we've got a guy like Kubo that can come off the bench now when Orishano is gassed in the 65th minute, and a guy that can still be confident and put the ball on the frame. Like, we're not missing the starter that just went out. So, all right. So that's Yuya Kubo news. Team of the match day. I think it was well earned. Great performance. But on the other side of that, we have FC Cincinnati releasing Brett Halsey this week, which to me was a bit of a shock, right? That wing back position, we've talked about it being not a really deep piece, Coach. I know you had mentioned that earlier. What do you think about the release of Brett Halsey? I don't know that we need to speculate on reasons why, but what does it mean to the team?
Yeah, I won't speculate on reasons, but it is taking a position that was already probably the shallowest on the team and just made it one spot shallower. You have now a guy in Alvis Powell who I think has lost a step as your backup right wing back, and you have DeAndre Yedlin, and then everyone else, then Lucas Engel and everyone else who can play there. We saw Yuya Kubo get some more minutes there, is not a wing back. So there has to be something, either something that Pat Noonan saw that was just like, this isn't going to work for my team. Or, if you want to be generous, maybe this is the time in the season when people are still looking to add. And if he's not in your plans long term, maybe you cut him loose to do him a favor to allow him to land with another team. He's going to end up signing with Colorado. Isn't that where all of the SEC players go to live out their second lives?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. It was fun watching the Colorado Austin match after the Cincinnati match ended and seeing Vasquez and Ian Murphy and Awazium out there. It was just a ton of fun. It was like FCC, like days past. So it brings me to a question that's not in our rundown. Rupesh just threw it out there. Does Daly get added when he's healthy? Like, are they opening a spot for Amir Daly, or do you think they're going to go out and look for someone else? Because they've got to get someone else in that wingback position. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's possible there could be U22 opportunity coming up here to fill that void. It could be that they're looking at FCC2. Maybe there's somebody there that they really like Daly, that they think is maybe ready for some, meaningful either MLS minutes or, Champions Cup if they make it to the next round, which we'll talk about here momentarily. But yeah, I don't know the reason for Brett Halsey's hiring, but him being sent away, but yeah.
In other FCC news, we can come back to Brett Halsey in a few minutes if you guys want to talk more about that. But Nick Hagglund getting a start for FCC 2 on Sunday night. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later in the show. Justin Blair actually was there at the match, got an exclusive interview with Nick Hagglund. So we'll share some of those clips a little bit later, but exciting to see him back out on the pitch. Mm-hmm. And then maybe the biggest news of the day is that FCC 2 kits will soon, potentially, maybe sometime in the future, be available for purchase. How about that, guys? I don't know. I'd make a little joke about that. That was our social media posts today went out with the kits that look fantastic. I know people have been wanting those kits for years now. And it's something about, FCC says they're working on selling the shirts sometime in the near future. You guys excited about that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that would be so cool. Now, hopefully they make enough. We don't have the patch fiasco, which, they redeemed themselves. Now you can pre-order, that's great. But yeah, I mean, that would be so cool to have.
They also had the replicas of the inaugural USL jerseys available in the team store, and I think they lasted all of 30 minutes of the first half before those were all eaten up. Can I just say, the FCC2 kit design, which is a throwback to the second year in USL, how has that design not made it to the MLS yet? Like, how has FCC not pulled this design? It's their best design. It's their best kit that they've ever had. It's bothering me that this has never been brought up once as a possibility for the home kit. Like, am I wrong? Like,
I think this
is their best design.
I will say I love the design better than the sash that we have now. I do think it's been brought up on this show. I don't know that it's been brought up by the right people to the right people, but I know people love those kits, and maybe that's the draw. Let's get people here to see these kits because you won't see them anywhere else. So,
man, there is more subterfuge and a cloak of darkness around how kit designs get chosen than there is on how Inter Miami stays roster rule compliant. Like, nobody is finding out. I don't know if Adidas just creates them in a lab. I don't know if you have like Dom Kinnear, when you see him scratching on that iPad over there, if he's like shading in kit designs to send to Adidas. But who knows? But yeah, the two kits have been prettier, shall we say.
Yeah. And I will say that we've probably got a better chance of figuring that out than how Miami is staying roster compliant. People quit talking about that because there's no figuring that out. Am I right?
No.
Yeah. Well, hey, guys, we're going to jump. What's that, Nick?
I said Don Garber. That's all you have to know.
Nick, what's your email address? No, I'm just kidding. We would love to hear from you if you agree with Nick on the kits being the top design we've seen for FC Cincinnati. Let us know in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. Or if you disagree and want to have some words with Nick or the rest of us, because we love them too, drop your comments in the chat. And while you're there, we're going to move into the game recap here against Toronto. And we're going to talk a little bit about our best and worst. So if you've got best and worst, I know some of you have already started dropping them in there. Go ahead and put those in the chat. We'll get those up on the screen here momentarily. But we come out of Toronto, or we come out of TQL Stadium with a win over Toronto 2-0. Goals by Kevin Denke in the 73rd minute, the PK that we got there that was almost not a PK because the obvious arm out ball hitting the hand was not obvious in real time. Apparently had to review that. Maybe we'll talk about that. And then Yu Yakuba, as we talked about earlier in the show, in his 88th minute strike with an assist from Evander was fantastic. Coach, let's start with you. Let's go with your best and worst.
Yeah, so my best is the way that FC Cincinnati got out on the front foot and played offense in transition. Every time it seemed like Toronto really got any numbers forward, as soon as that ball was won back, FC Cincinnati was back down in their offensive third and 2 or 3 passes. We saw that on one of Yu Yakubo's disallowed goals in the 78th minute when Buka won the ball. He found Evander, made a cute little half turn and played Corey Baird into space up the right. And that's when Baird kind of dribbled inside, tried to pass it into a cluster. It ended up with Yuya on the right, and he was offside. But we saw that also on the goal, came off of a fantastic transition. So my best is absolutely how this team just got out and got running, because with their defense, I think that allows them to beat anyone in the league. No matter who they're playing, if they can play in transition, they can win. That said, my worst is they were not able to convert chances until, they needed a penalty kick to open that game up. And it wasn't even a penalty kick that they earned through like really fantastic slick play. It was a pretty poor one to give away. One that I am sure Robin Fraser is like going to Spicer and being like, what were you doing blocking that with your arm? It was a totally not dangerous situation. Just one of those boneheaded plays. They got the PK though, and it opened up and they won. So we can't complain. But the fact that had to happen before, they could really get their scoring boots on was, I think, a little bit troubling.
Yeah. You take advantage of the chances you have there, right? If it took a PK, let's do it and let's get rolling from there. So thanks, Coach, for that. Jose, let's jump to you. Your best.
I'm going to build on what Coach just said. I mean, I'm going to start with the worst, and that's the final third. They're still struggling, and we saw that yesterday. Toronto's not a good team. I mean, let's just be honest about this. So I'm a little worried about tomorrow and then subsequent games. However, I went back and looked at some stats in that 2022 year when things got turned around. FCC, other than I think it was LA, FC, Austin, and Philadelphia, scored the most goals in the league. So they were fourth. That's when we had Brenner, Vasquez, and Acosta. It took them a while to get there, but they got there. So I think the trio here of Evander, of Denke, and Orellano at some point is going to click. And then hopefully we'll start seeing those goals. So yes, right now my worst is that final third, but I think that will come. My best was, I think Pat Noonan got the tactics just right. I mean, the formation, the rotation, because he needed to worry about tomorrow's game as well, the injuries that are still there. So from my perspective, he got the tactics, the formation, the rotation just right. And he made almost the right subs. Like you guys, I wish we would have seen Evander and Orellano play even a few minutes, but in general, he made the changes at the right time. I would say an honorable mention in terms of the best is Powell. Yeah, he has lost a step, but he was moving up and down, and when he lost a step, he would recover. So to me, it's kind of an honorable mention because I looked at his heat map too, and he was all over in terms of that right side. So that's my worst and my best.
I may have to disagree a little bit with the two of you because I feel like Powell has played some solid matches here. And maybe I need to rewatch them and see what you're seeing. But just last week, we were talking about needing a guy like Powell to break a press when no one else will do it, that will take it coast to coast. So maybe defensively, he's lost a step. I don't know. I haven't seen it quite that much this season. I've been really impressed with Alvis Powell more this season than any other season in the past.
Can I just say, Brian, I thought Alvis Powell had a pretty good game overall. I would just say there was a period early in the second half where all of a sudden Toronto looked like they were going to have, come out of the locker room, maybe score a goal, maybe get right into the game before FC Cincinnati had even scored, where they had two really good chances and both of them came off of Alvis Powell stepping to the ball being passed, and then his runner just running by him and him taking a hot second before he realized, oh, I should follow that guy, and then getting outrun by that guy, whether it was a center forward. It was not a speedy little winger outrunning him. You know, the first one ended up out of where they crossed it and it went through a bunch of bodies, and then it came to the outside right top of the box and the shot hit right at Roman. It was his one save. And then in the 52nd minute, there was that's the cross that came in where Teenage Hadeb had to make a really nice sliding touch to put it out for a corner. That was really dangerous. And those two chances were like, before FC Cincinnati had scored, one of those goes in, it's a totally different game.
And I'm just pushing that out of my brain because I'm still living in the fact that Alvis Powell hit a shot from distance that was on frame early in the match, and it was the best shot I've ever seen. I don't know if he meant to cross it, but it was on frame, and I will take that from Alvis Powell.
He's going to hit one of these days.
He's going to get that too.
Golazo.
Alvis Powell or Corey Baird, who scores first this season? We'll debate that. We'll debate that later in the show. I want to jump into
Santos while you're at it.
I want to jump into some of the chat here, some of the best and worst. We've got Kevin Michael says his best is keeping Bernadeschi silent for the most part, and he certainly was. He still got it, but we kept him silent. And then Baird, there we go. Baird again, close to scoring. And this guy just can't buy a goal. How about that? Kevin Michael and I see eye to eye on that one. Wolfster, Brandon says best is new show background. How about that, guys? And then his worst is he wants more goals. We have a few more we'll get to as we go. I want to jump in and share my best and worst, and then I want to get to you, Nick, to round this out. My best, we talked about Kubo early in the show. I don't want to say too much because we already covered it, but I think Kubo being more of an offensive threat was fantastic. Again, giveaways in the midfield, missing that final pass, but him getting on the end of the ball 3 times and getting it in the net. Again, whether they counted or not, he was there and he put it in. Seeing him hitting frame was fantastic. That was my best. I think he earned team of the match day. And my worst was, man, just no rest for the weary. Like we've got bang, 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 game after game after game. And they just played Saturday, jumped on a flight, and they're playing again tomorrow night. And it's not a normal game time. It's 3 hours later than they normally kick off. They're in Mexico. They're in altitude. They're in front of a rough crowd, right? It's going to be a physical game. And so we'll just see. We'll see how these guys return on Tuesday night or Wednesday morning, whenever they get back. So that's my worst. Nick, let me throw it to you for your best and worst.
Yeah, for me, a couple of you guys have touched on it already, but for me, the formation change, I think, was the big story of this game. To me, they just looked a little bit more creative up front, a little bit more crisper up front with that extra midfielder being moved from that, the back 3 center backs with an extra person in the midfield. If anything, it felt like it gave them a little bit more options to do stuff with up front. I thought there, more passing lanes. There looked like players with the ball had more options. They could either dribble, they had a couple of options to pass. I think that really opened things up for the offense, really from the get-go. FCC was just attacking all night long. And I really do think a lot of it had to do with the formation change. Coach, I know we're going to get into maybe some of the tactics behind that here coming up in the a little bit later in the show. So I want to talk to you about, maybe specifically what you saw. I will go for my worst though. And I think that's going to transition us to the next topic, which is what's going on with the set pieces here. This is something we notice in the stands. This is something that's been talked about on, FCC Reddit, here at Cincy Soccer Talk in our community. It just seems like no matter how good the team is, those set pieces over the last 2 years just haven't seemed to get there. We've seen some awful balls taken from a couple of different people, either from corners or for a free kick into the box. We've seen good passes into the box that are just headed away by one of 3 defenders in the area. So a lot going on I think with set pieces that leave a lot to be desired right now.
Yeah. So, Nick, that makes me think back to I still coach a little bit, but I coached middle school girls soccer a number of years ago. And if you've not coached middle school girls soccer, it is quite an experience. I was just telling a friend of mine the story yesterday that in our first match every season, without fail, for the 5 years I coached, without fail, the ball would go out of bounds and the girl would stop on the sideline and go, what do I do? What do I do now? Like, well, go get the ball for starters, right? And then they come up and they go, what do I do? Like, throw it in. And so they just grab it underhand and like toss it. And we're like, oh, we didn't even work on this. We didn't think at this age, you needed to know how to throw a ball in. So it made me think, like, are they working on these set pieces in training? And no doubt they are, but it doesn't seem like they found the guy that's gonna put the ball where it needs to be. That's my take on it. Jose, I know you've looked into some of the stats a little bit deeper.
Yeah, I mean, I was curious because I'm an engineer and I also have a graduate in business, so I always okay, what do the numbers tell me? And the stats out there, the XGs for corner kicks for Cincinnati puts them in 23rd place out of 30. 23rd. First one is Chicago, by the way, and then just for kicks, I looked up free kicks too. No, not better, like in 19th or 20th. And first place is LA, by the way, LA Galaxy. So I think it is a function of who takes them. But is the coaching staff do they have actually a strategy, a tactic? Well, here's how we're going to do corner kicks. Here's what we're going to put our towers. Do we do a short one versus a long one? Near post, far post? And I don't know. I mean, I'm just speculating here. Free kicks, also something similar. So whatever it is they're doing, the stats say it's not working, and we see it. I mean, our perception, okay, this is not working. Well, the stats are backing that up. And again, it could be a function of the kicker or a combination of the kicker and the tactics they're using.
To me, we talk about the kicker itself, and I think we all have PTSD of Lucho Acosta nailing the closest defender to the post in the face a couple of times last year. Yeah. I know we talk about that. That's obviously step one. To me, I think back to 2023. And who are our two center backs, Matt Miazga and Yerson Mosquera.
Mm-hmm.
They were, for lack of a better term, douchebags in the box. And what I mean by that, both great people, let me say that. But what I mean by that is they were the ones that were right up on the goalkeeper.
Yep.
They were the ones that were fighting for space. And not to mention, they're also two really good target guys.
Yeah.
So you're putting a lot of emphasis on defending them. That's going to open it up. Even if they don't, get ahead on the ball, that's opening up for some of the other players in the box. And since Miazga went down last year, it just doesn't seem like there's been that kind of danger in terms of the players in the box for the other team to defend, basically, like that. There just hasn't been that type of player to go in and really cause enough disruption to open up targets in the box next to that goal. And I think that's something that when Miazga gets healthy, I think we might see a little improvement there. Honestly, Nick Hagglund was really good at that too. So I do think that is one element that's not talked about enough.
Yeah,
I will say this, Coach. I want to get to your point here in a second too, but I as you were talking about the kicker, right, Nick? It was another day, it was another league. But if you remember the days of Emmanuel Ledesma taking corner kicks and taking set pieces, he put the ball on a dime where he needed it, when it needed to be there, and on the guy that was making the run, right? So I'm not saying FC Cincinnati doesn't have a player like that, but he was good at getting the ball where it needed to be. And so maybe it has to do with the kicker. Maybe it does have to do with, guys shoving each other around, creating that space in the box. Coach, what are your thoughts on our set pieces?
Yeah, I mean, you put the graphic up just a little bit ago from Rupesh that he said there was a study some years ago that something like 2% of corners lead to a goal. I don't know if that's the right number, but I do know corner kicks and free kicks from distance are such low percentage chances to the point where I don't even cheer when FC Cincinnati gets a corner and the fans all stand up and they're like, I don't, because I'm like, what? Like, they have statistically the same amount of chance scoring here as starting with Roman with the ball in his hands and building from there, maybe even less. So with a free kick like that, you're really just trying to cause chaos. And so oftentimes, like an XG stat that's going to just be basically like shots that come directly off of that cross is not going to tell the whole story. Whereas in this match, you have in the aftermath of a corner in the 39th minute, Luca Orishano cutting into his left and curling a shot that was barely pushed away by Sean John, that then Corey Baird, the almost man, hit the post yet again, right? Then a little bit later, actually a lot later, you had in the aftermath of a corner kick, the guy back there playing prevent defense and what I like to call the Justin Hoyt position. Alvis Powell picks the ball up, hits it back to Evander, and Evander crosses and earns that PK that we talked about earlier. So it's like those were set piece opportunities that generated offense, even if it didn't come directly from that first kick. Do I think set pieces are a strength of this team? Absolutely not. Do I think it'll get better when Miazga and maybe even Hagglund are back and in the mix? Absolutely. Should there be a guy on the team that can take free kicks and be way more accurate than we've seen? You know, you talked about PTSD, Nick, with Lucho Acosta. Luca Orishano is doing his best to do a Lucho Acosta impersonation because his free kicks were terrible last night.
They were.
They were. You know, it's just guys trying to be too perfect. Like he's trying to hit that ball with dip to get it just over that first defender and then drop it down, you know, and that's really hard to do. So he hits the first defender. Overall, I don't worry about it. It's really low percentage chances anyway. And as long as they're creating chaos with some of their free kicks, which they did, I think that they're doing okay.
Yeah. Maybe I have overly high expectations for corner kicks, and I'll just because I watched, my son's U16 team play, like it's definitely not that level, but honestly, their only goals come off of set pieces.
Oh, really?
Right? My son is scoring on he takes their corners and they're like 40% go in the net, either off the corner or on a runner, just because they practice, they're that good at it. So maybe my expectations are a little high because of a above average U16 team that can do it. And I expect, Luca Orishano to be able to do that. Yeah. Anyway, I want to jump to, I'm going to skip a little bit here in our rundown because I want to jump to the formation change that we mentioned a little bit ago. I think that's going to get us into some additional conversation about this match and maybe what we can look forward to from FC Cincinnati moving forward. So we saw the change, the 4 in the back, the 4-2-3-1 formation that FC Cincinnati posted on their social media pregame. I was a little shocked by it. I know we've talked about it, but once they finally made the move to it, especially in this match at home against Toronto, I was a little surprised by it. Coach, what advantage did that formation give to FC Cincinnati in this match?
Yeah, without getting too deep into the tactics, because we're going to do that in a minute, I think that front three of Denke, Baird, and Orishano, and then you throw Kubo in that front four was just much more fluid. You had those guys, those wingers coming inside. You had Kubo dropping in deep. Sometimes for large stretches, Kubo was playing higher than Denke as he dropped in. So the fluidity of having that kind of attacking four, I think, was really nice.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, we'll get into more tactics of that formation here in just a moment. I want to highlight some of the players that played in that formation and some of the standout performances that we saw. We talked about Luca Orishano just a moment ago, and maybe the lack of, ability to put the corner kick, just beyond the near post or whatever. But man, when he was on the field immediately, there were 4 defenders around him. Like the first touch that he got on the ball, and I know several people mentioned it on social media. People were in our chat talking about it. The 4 closest guys collapsed on him, and he turned out of it, made the pass, and moved on beyond it. So the guy's drawing attention. He's a guy that, if you watched him play last season, and I was maybe harsh in a couple episodes of this show about he only uses his left foot, but I think rightfully so. Yeah. Playing on that right side as an inverted winger, he wants to cut in and maybe crowds that space a little bit, but he wants to cut in, hit the ball with his left foot. But if you watch him, he will beat a player down the right side, and the player knows, well, at some point he's going to stop and cut back. So I'm just going to give him some space, and I'm going to wait for him to turn and cut back. So I do think his performance was fantastic, but I wish we could see him cut to his right a little bit more and put balls across or hit some shots that way. He can create like nobody else on the field. I just want to see him create the other direction a little bit. What do you guys think of Luka?
Yeah, you mentioned that one play he had where he just kind of dribbled through 4 defenders that seemingly had him boxed in on that sideline there. And that's just what Luca Orejano does well. Creativity and aggressiveness, I think, are his 2 biggest assets. And you started to see that in the brief time that we've seen him play this season. I think he's so good at creating attacking chances from almost nothing, from very tight spaces. And other than Evander, I don't think there's a lot of current players on the FCC roster that can do that. At least from the midfield, not up top. I still think he's somebody that is going to play at his best when he's got somebody to play off of. We saw him and Lucho last year, the magic that those two created. The times where he was in the midfield and Yamil Assad was on the sideline, those two had some really good chemistry. I would think that person would possibly be Evander, and it's a shame that we didn't see those two together in this game. But for me to maximize Luca Orejano, you're going to have to get somebody else up there kind of in the same area as him that can do sort of the same things and be able to kind of create plays from tight space.
Yeah, Jose, what do you think of Orejano's performance?
Yeah, I mean, I think both you, Brian, and Nick already touched on that, and he clearly, he's a guy that now teams consider dangerous. They saw it last year, but I think now they probably realize, okay, without Lucho, he's going to be their go-to guy now, even though we all now have Evander as well. So teams are going to be, pressing him a lot. Like you said, he's going to need somebody else to play off. He's still a little rusty. I mean, but it's obvious, he's coming back from injury, didn't get to really train with the team. But I think, once again, I go back to once we have that front 3 all healthy, all playing together for several games, I think we're going to see a different level of Luka because he's going to have other 2, one to target, another one to play off. The pressure is going to be less on him now, maybe on the other ones as well. So once that trio gets going, and by the way, if we're having this discussion in April, at the end of April, then there's something wrong.
Right, no doubt.
Yeah, Orejano is the one guy that can actually create something out of nothing by himself. Evander can beat you twice in like a 3-yard by 3-yard square, but he's not blowing by you and shooting, right? He can pick a pass. He can do a lot of great things. Luka's the only guy on the team that can actually just do it all by himself. And so defenses have to notice that. And we've seen it time and time again. Nate Gilman has a really great Substack where he writes and he uses a lot of data. And, he talks about long distance shots being really low percentage shots. But Orejano, we've seen him time and time again be able to put those on frame. And if you can do that, it doesn't matter. Logically, you might be saying in your brain, if he shoots from 35 yards, it's a low percentage. But if he's putting them on frame and your goalkeeper's diving to keep them out, you're trying to get tight to him all the time, which just opens up more space for everyone.
Were you all at the game? Were you at the match?
Yep.
All 3 of you? Okay, so I was the only one of the 4 of us watching on TV. And he tried another one from about midfield, and it was really, really bad, right? It was really, really wide. But it was Tyler Terrans, it was broadcasting, I believe, right? And said something about, Orejano hits his, obligatory every 6 months, midfield shot. And unfortunately, this one goes a little wide. So it's a guy that's going to create from 60 yards, 70 yards, sometimes 79 and a half yards, right? He's going to create. We give him the ball and the final third, he's gonna find his shots.
So I will say something about that chance because we saw it was right in front of us. To me, it almost looked like more like Orejano clearing because he did sort of pull up, looked like maybe a small cramp, and he walked over to the right to the bench after that for some water. So I don't know if it was a shot attempt as much as it more I'm hurt. I need to get this ball downfield.
All right. I'll give that to you so he can keep his percentage up. He's 2 for 3 last year. He missed 1 in the All-Star game.
Yeah.
So he's 2 for 3 from beyond midfield. All right. How about the performance of Kevin Denke? We've seen him in a couple different roles, right? Running through, hitting crosses, turning guys in the box. and putting balls on net. He had to play seemingly a little bit deeper at times to receive the ball and play off some of the guys running off of him with the formation that we played this last week. Jose, what do you think of Kevin Denke's play?
Well, again, I go back that as long as he doesn't have both Orellano and Evander, I think he's going to be, and I'm probably not using the right word here. I'm sure coach will, expand on that. I felt he was isolated. And again, I don't think it's the correct way of saying it. It just plays going to him seemed to be a little bit more difficult. Maybe because they were crowding him, maybe because the other players just didn't know how to get to him. So I felt at times that he was out there almost fighting the battle by himself because plays were not getting to him. Again, maybe it's not isolated. It's just something that I saw. So I would really like to hear what coach thinks.
Well, and this is the point in the show that if I had the Rocky music, I would play it, because I think we're going to hear maybe a little bit of disagreement here and maybe a little bit of a battle going on here, Coach.
Well, I mean, I don't know that it's a battle, because Jose was like, no, I might not be using the right word, but we were talking about beforehand. And I just flat out disagree with the term isolated at all, because I think it was the exact opposite problem. I think he was crowded. And the reason why he didn't get on the ball as much is because you had Corey Baird, you had Yuya Kubo, you had Luca Orellano all wanting to come into the middle of the field and receive the ball, which means there were no passing lanes to get the ball to Kevin Denke. And in fact, I referenced it when we talked about Yuya Kubo in the second half. Denke just was like, no, you go up top. I'm going to go stand back here in the midfield where you've been standing so I can touch the ball. And he still had his moments, right? In the 17th minute, he dropped in and received the ball, an excellent turn on his defender. And then he passed it forward to Baird in the left half space, and Baird just couldn't control his first touch and it got booted away. But it should have been a big chance. It was such a slick turn by KD, which I've just started calling him so I don't have to write it all out on the rundown. But I think isolated is just, it gives the wrong sense. When you say a striker is isolated, you're saying he's leading the line up top, and the midfield can't get close enough to him to help him. Like he's all alone. And I think it was the exact opposite problem.
Yeah, and again, I use the word isolated because, I don't understand the proper terminology. But my point more is that he's not being as effective up there right now, because call it that you don't have both Evander and Orellano helping out. Call it that the team is still gelling. So they have a really big target there. And we know he's been scoring. So we know he's effective, and he can score with both feet, by the way. But the way maybe the team right now is configured because of injuries or rotation, I don't think that he is getting the opportunities that he needs to continue showing us who he is.
Here's the thing, though, I will say about that, Jose, is the biggest thing that I think I've been impressed with Kevin Denke so far is his ability to play with the ball at his feet.
Absolutely.
And you're seeing him kind of create some of those chances for himself. When I think of the word target man, I'm thinking of Brandon Vasquez from when he was here. I'm thinking of that kind of player who's, gets the ball in the box, kicks it in, and it's a goal. Those are the kind of players that I'm thinking of. So when people were thinking or saying, Kevin Denke's a target man, I'm kind of thinking it's the same kind of finisher. I have been so impressed with his ball handling skills.
Yes.
And you're right, Jose. I don't think the ball is getting to him enough in order to make him as effective as he could be. But I've been impressed with how he's kind of taking the reins on himself, getting the ball, being able to spring 2 or 3 defenders, like the one play that coach mentioned, which I think was one of the best plays I saw of the game, and either set up a chance for himself or pass it to a teammate in a better position. So that's
and you're right. Because Vasquez was very good as the target, the pure target man. Get it to him, and he's a position he's going to score, but he couldn't really hold on to the ball. He couldn't really dribble. Whereas Denke can. He can hold, he can dribble, and he can score. So that's quite a package.
And I think, and Brandon, I know we have to wrap up, but I do think once, Orellano's 100%, once he can figure out how to play with Evander, I do think you're going to see more opportunities to open Denke up and kind of release his full potential.
Yep.
Yeah, no doubt. And you guys mentioned Brandon Vasquez, and I'd mentioned earlier in the show, I watched the Austin match, who, he's playing with now, and thought, man, I miss this guy. His runs were great. He's going to be a dangerous player for Austin. If they can get the service, he's going to be that target man. His runs were great. But you know the thing about Brandon Vasquez, when he was in Cincinnati, you know where he visited when he needed his rehab? It was Beyond Exercise, who is a sponsor of our show tonight and every night. Beyond Exercise is a local physical therapy and fitness business that helps people stay active and injury-free. In fact, they help some of our local MLS Next, and FCC Academy players with their health and performance needs. Check out their suite of services at gobeyondexercise.com. Guys, we talk a little bit about the formation earlier. I want to get a little bit more into that here with Coach in our Talking Tactics segment. The shift to the back four, right, was a pretty big shift for Cincinnati in this last match, rather than the 3 or maybe the 5, whatever you call it in that formation. How did it change FCC's tactics in this match, Coach?
Yeah, so we've seen FCC, when they're in possession, split their center backs wide and push their wing backs high. What that means is sometimes the defensive center mids like Buka and Obi have to progress the ball. Sometimes it's one of those 10s, the dual 10s dropping in and dropping wide to do it. When I say 10s, I mean attacking midfielders. Oftentimes, though, it becomes the center backs because those players just get marked out of the match, and then they're swinging the ball from right center back to center back to left center back, and it becomes tedious. The only width and attack there is provided by those wingbacks pushed up high. But they have lots of options to combine when they come inside, right? Also, because they're wingbacks, they can release and get forward a lot earlier, so they're already pushed into the attack. Now, when you play with a back four, things are a bit different. First of all, they should do a few things when you play with a back four. First of all, when you build out, there should be a lot more space out there for those center backs, because remember, there's only 2 of them. So they kind of split wide about the width of the 18-yard box, and then they connect that ball through the defensive center midfielders. So here we saw Anunga and Buka, and those players can look around and drop into the appropriate space to get on the ball, as opposed to when it's a center back out there like Miles Robinson. He's kind of standing there in the middle, doesn't really have the option other than to be a pivot point, right? And now, because of this extra space, there are more gaps also to pass through the lines. That defense has to spread out. Now you have bigger windows to pass through. And you know what? That worked for this team. Anunga and Buka did really well dropping into those gaps and progressing the ball. Anunga, the guy who we thought couldn't pass a ball to save his life, led the team with 7 progressive passes. Now, actually, he tied for the lead with that, because Miles Robinson, who also had all that space, but those bigger windows, tied with 7 progressive passes. There was a lot of extra space out there for guys like Baird and Orishano to drop in and get on the ball. Orishano ended up leading the team with 14 progressive passes received. So a lot of space, right? Because the spacing is better. The second thing that should happen is you should have options in attack out wide other than those wingbacks. You should have wingers that can get the ball with the heels on their heels on the chalk and have the outside backs overlap or underlap them and draw a defender. This one didn't quite work for FC Cincinnati, and a big reason for that is Corey Baird is not a winger. He played out there almost like a second 10 the whole time. He kept coming way narrow. He and Kubo were occupying the same space a lot, and I talked about how hard that was for Denke to get on the ball because of that. Even when he did receive the ball out wide, he was mostly starting in the middle of the field and running out wide and receiving the ball, then facing the touchline. And what are you going to do with that? And then obviously the wing backs were just not able to get up the field. They weren't wing backs. The outside backs were not able to get up the field quickly enough to support the team in attack all the time because they couldn't release as quickly because they don't have that outside center back. So now the last thing, and there's lots of other things, but the last big thing is something I already touched on. The fluidity should be there when you have possession in the final third, because instead of having wing backs that are high and wide and those 3 center backs, all players that kind of can't go anywhere other than where they are, now you have outside backs that can overlap or underlap wings. You have wingers that can come in narrow or check from the far side to the top of the 18 when the ball's on the opposite side of the pitch to try to receive. You have a number 9 who can check in to receive the ball and then turn and have those wings crash from wide into the middle. And those kinds of runs are just harder to track. This is the one where FCC had some spotty success. Sometimes the 10, whether it was Kubo, got crowded out of the play because those wingers come in narrow. And when that's Kubo, fine, crowd him out. We're okay with that. But when Evander comes on, you got to give that guy some space to cook. So get out there wide, get your heels on the chalk. Other times, I talked about that 17th minute when KD received the ball and turned. Those were times when it worked really well, those wingers crashing in. So that 17th minute chance, I think, is indicative of the types of fluidity that this team could see if they continue with this going forward.
Yeah. So my question then is this something that Pat Noonan did based on the personnel he had, right? We talked about the release of Brett Halsey. Amir Daly was hurt in the Motagua match, so he's not available. Nick Hagglund's not back yet. Miazga's not back yet. Evander had a little issue, a bone bruise or whatever, so he didn't play a full match. Like, is this something we're going to see throughout the year, or is this something Noonan looked at his team and went, who's available and how can we get them on the pitch?
Yeah, Pat basically told us this was about rotation more than options, but he kind of left it in there that it could be a good option. I think the team doesn't really have the personnel to play this way because they don't have wings, Kubo, Baird. These guys don't want to get out and get their heels on the chalk. Or Shano loves to come inside, but he did a really good job of balancing it by staying wide. And it shows that he's played wing for a big part of his career. None of those other guys have. I know Corey Baird has done it a bit, but he's not a natural winger. He's a natural second forward. Same with Yuya Kubo. So I just don't think they have the personnel to do it too often.
Yeah. So you hit on the offense there, Coach. I want to talk about the defense and the defending third. Obviously, not having a third center back maybe puts a little bit more challenge on those two defensive midfielders. Talk to me about how different Obi, Anunga, Buka are going to have to play if they decide to keep doing this back four instead of the back five.
Yeah, man, Nick, you hit the nail on the head with this. Those two defensive center mids have huge responsibility because whenever those center backs get stretched, it is their job to drop into that back line like a third center back to defend runners from deep, to defend crosses, all of that. And I thought Anunga and Buka both did a great job. We didn't get to see it, but I question whether Obi has the discipline to do that because he likes to go hunting, man. He wants to just go run around and find the ball. And when you have three center backs, you can do that because you usually have another center back coming into the midfield tracking runners too. The other thing those DCMs have to do is when the wing backs or when the outside backs can't recover, remember there's not an outside center back behind them. So they also have to cover out wide. So the bonus here is even though they have a lot more field to cover, it's more structured, right? They understand the wing backs caught high. I go out there. The right center back goes out to defend in space. I drop in as a right center back. Same thing on the left. You kind of just replace the player that moves. Whereas when you have three center backs, you never know which center back is stepping into the midfield. And then should you drop for them or should you get out of his way? Is there a forward coming behind me that I need to mark or is the center back going to pick it up? It's much more difficult. Actually having one fewer player out there makes you have to work a lot harder, but the communication becomes easier.
What do you think? And we'll preview the Tigres match a little bit later, but do you think they come out in a 4-back or do you think we return to our standard 5-back, 3-back sword formation that we've been playing?
Yeah, I'll be pretty surprised if they go with a back four against Tigres, just because Tigres is going to want to get out on the front foot and get a goal quick to get that crowd rocking. So I think they're going to want to absorb some contact. Now, maybe if they're still chasing a goal in the second half, we'll see that.
Yeah, it's good that they have the versatility to be able to do it, right? And again, as you mentioned, we may not see it a lot, but against a team like Toronto, it was good to be able to roll it out, see what we can do, and go from there. So, guys, I want to shift our attention a little bit to a player that we hinted at a little bit earlier, Nick Hagglund, who got his first start for FCC2 this week. It was great to see him out on the pitch, getting his legs underneath him. Our own Justin Blair was there at the match. He was there in the box observing. He watched Nick play, and he got an interview with Nick after the match. And so I want to share a couple clips of that interview tonight. So there's 3 clips. They're about 30 seconds each. Justin, in the first question, asked Nick about playing for FCC2 and what it was like preparing for that match versus maybe the ones team. So here's Nick addressing that question.
Yeah, it was nice to be back out there running around, kicking the ball, the same thing I've done for my whole life. But it was fun to be out there. I prepared for this game just like I prepare for any MLS game. I think every time you step on the pitch, you want to put out a good foot, a good showing, and be an example for the guys that are taking their first pro minutes. So I'm in the locker room saying all the same things I would say in a first team game, and trying to give them the feel of what it's like to, no matter where you are, no matter what opportunity you have, you got to put your best foot forward.
Yeah, I think that's spoken like a true pro, right?
Mm-hmm.
Preparing for this game, just like I'm preparing for any other match, and leading the way for the young guys. Did you guys hear anything in that?
I think it's classic Nick. I mean, whenever he's out on the field, he gives it his all, and that's one of the things I like about him. I mean, every time he's out there, you can tell he's having a good time. He's enjoying it. He's playing with passion and with drive, and that was classic Nick.
Yeah. So Justin asked him the next question about his return from injury and what his rehab's been like, and when we're gonna maybe see him get his legs under him a little bit. And here's what he had to say.
Yeah, I mean, if you look back maybe like 3-4 months ago, I was like, I may never step on a soccer field again. There were days, even the beginning of preseason, where I was like, I'm going to see how this goes, and I don't know how I'm going to feel. And, slowly we're progressing, starting to see things and see the light at the end of the tunnel. And, this is just another step in getting back onto the field in an MLS match. And, it's been a grind. I thought, doctors first said 2 to 3 months, then 4 to 6 months, then 4 to 6 months turned to 6 to 8 months. And there's always a little something. To be back on the pitch, really meaningful tonight. And my family was out in the get to see me do that. My girls they were excited to just see me, play soccer again, which was fun.
I was a little surprised about his rehab time and how it's been pushed back. And yet it sounds that he's going to return sooner than Miazga is, which wasn't what we heard from Pat Noonan ahead of time.
Yeah.
Which makes me wonder about Miazga's rehab and injury at this point.
Mm-hmm.
That's concerning if we can't get him back soon.
Yeah, no doubt. We got some set pieces we got to work on. We got to get those two back out there, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. So here's Nick talking this final clip about when we might see him with the first team again out on the pitch.
Feel things out. We've been in CONCACAF. We've played, I don't know, like 6 matches now, and it's been basically like a game, regen day before game. So there hasn't been an opportunity for me to really train and open up my legs and play 11v11. So this was an opportunity to get to do that and test out all the things that I've been working out. And so I feel like it was a real good opportunity for me to test it on the turf and see how the ankle really holds up in an environment that may be a little bit more chaotic than, say, an MLS game. And so I think passed all the tests and looking forward to get more minutes.
Feel the same way about coming back and doing 2 podcasts a week during the Champions Cup season.
Yeah, there's a lot to it, right? There's a lot of work to get yourself back out there. Yeah, so we're excited to see Nick when he comes back, whether it's this week against Tigres, which I'm not sure we'll see him or not, but whenever he gets back out there, it sounds like he's put in a lot of good hard work, and looking forward to seeing him. Guys, speaking of Justin being at the FCC2 match, we've got a lot of CST staff members, writers, photographers, podcasters out just creating a lot of content, pushing stuff out, just so you can get your fix of FC Cincinnati throughout the week, and FC Cincinnati 2, and some of the other local soccer teams in the area, and players that are coming out of Cincinnati that are now playing professionally in other places. So if you'd like to support the work that we're doing here at Cincinnati Soccer Talk, making content like this, head over to CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com/support. And from there, you're able to sign up for Patreon. We mentioned earlier, there's a free tier where you can get some great content. There are several paid tiers that get you into things like the Growler Cup and, our photography, the albums. That's the word I'm looking for. The albums that our photographers are putting together at each match. So check it out over there. Paid Patreon subscription does enter you into the Growler Cup competition, as well as getting you some other great CST content that we mentioned already. Guys, before we wrap up and get to our final thoughts, we have to talk about this Tigres match and preview this a little bit for tomorrow night. Get our fans, get Cincinnati Soccer Talk listeners ready for this match. What realistically, we don't have a whole lot of time to talk about this, but realistically, what can we expect from FCC in this match? And jump in whenever. We don't need to go necessarily around the horn, but just jump in if you got something to share.
Look, you got Miles Robinson, DeAndre Yedlin, who have played in Mexico, won a friendly, won a competitive match. They know what it's like. They know the ambience. They know the pressure. I think they can get the team ready. Say, look, guys, this is what you're going to expect. Nothing like being on the field, especially in El Volcán down there. But I think you have two guys who have been there, done that, and they can get the team ready. They have to. FCC is going to have to create opportunities. I mean, a 0-0 tie won't be enough. They either have to tie beyond zeros or win the game outright. And by time beyond zeros, that means you go to penalty kicks. Realistically, I think it's going to be a tie, and they're going to go to PKs. And then after that, that's a,
Yeah, I don't expect FC Cincinnati to get out of this match with a tie. I expect them to lose. And that, I mean, I think they absolutely could win. Jose, you hit the nail on the head with the fact that they have guys that have experience. They had to play Monterrey last year, so they've done this. But we've seen this time and time again that teams from Liga MX either just hold serve in America or even lose by a goal and then go home and just smash MLS teams in Mexico. It has to do with where they are in their season, fitness, all of these things. I also think Tigres had an extra day of rest. I think they played on Friday, not Saturday. So it seems to me like the cards are stacked against FC Cincinnati. I will be pleasantly surprised if they take this to penalties or somehow get a win.
Yeah, I think it is in concept a winnable game. I just think back to leg one where Tigres was coming in with so many injured people. They were the ones kind of playing on wonky rest, and FCC couldn't drop the hammer down and get more than a draw. That seemed like the opportunity to really set the tone. Like I said, I do think it is a winnable game, but if we want to see FCC move on to the next round, they're going to have to play the best game that we've seen them play to this year so far in all competitions. And who knows? I mean, they're still coming back from injury, so who knows if they have the capability to do that yet.
Yeah. I'm a guy that is the eternal optimist. I think FC Cincinnati can win every match that they step on the pitch, and I don't want to give up anything. Maybe I'm a little like Pat Noonan. I want to go for the win every time. I think this is going to be, you guys all hit on it, this is going to be a tough match, but Pat Noonan does want to win, and he wants to put his best foot forward every time that he can. We've heard him say as much. Either way, I think FC Cincinnati comes out of this match more battered and bruised than when they left Cincinnati to play in Monterrey. I think it's going to be a long week ahead of them when they return of recovery from this CONCACAF. Beat them up, knock them down, tight match against Tigres. If Cincinnati advances, if they advance, I'm going to go with Justin Blair. I know we saw his score up there. It's going to be from a 2-2 tie, and that's only going to be because of the 2 away goals that matter more. Tigres had the 1 away. If we can tie it up at 2. That's, I think, our only chance of Cincinnati advancing. Otherwise, I think we come out with the 2-1 loss potentially in this game. I would love to see them move on. It's winnable, but it's going to be a tough one.
Yeah, quickly, Brian, I will just say, if you had to design a team that was capable of getting a result in Mexico, I think that this team might be it. Certainly it'd be better to have Matt Miazga back, but they still have 3 really good center backs. Flores has been so impressive, and Hadeb and Miles Robinson. You have a right wing back and a left wing back, both of whom are better defensively than offensively right now. You have Obi and Buka in the middle, Anunga to bring on late, and then you have enough attacking talent up front to where you can get maybe a smash and grab sort of a transition goal. And we're coming off of the best match that we've seen FCC play in terms of scoring or generating chances in transition.
Yeah. You said something there that caught my attention, Coach. It was the pronunciation of Hadeb. We've heard it Hadebi, and he's pronounced it recently Hadeb himself. So
I'm trying to practice. FC Cincinnati put out some videos.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they put out videos of them pronouncing their own names. So when you say your own name, you're going to say it right. Luckily or unfortunately, we didn't have Luca Orshano tell us his name yet, so we're going to just go with Orshano. But yeah, Teenage Hadeb is how he said it.
Well done. I caught that, and I just wanted to draw some attention to that. Guys, let's talk about our final thoughts. We're a little bit over time. We're going to go a little bit longer over time because I want to get to these final thoughts. Coach, glad to have you each and every Monday night. Glad you're a part of it. Wrap us up with your final thought.
Yeah, I love that Pat Noonan tried something different with the formation. I talked about some of the problems with it, but one big underrated aspect of that change was it took a game that could have been a potential trap game. You go in against Toronto, and it takes all the players into their head of, man, I have to think through my actions here. I have to stay tuned in because I can't just go with rote muscle memory. And so I think that helped. It also probably surprised Toronto. They didn't know what was coming. They probably prepared for a back three all week because FC Cincinnati hasn't played in a back four since like 2022. And now for the next few matches, probably even Tigres, those teams, even if they don't think FC Cincinnati will line up in a back four, they have to at least consider that in their preparations. Now, maybe if he goes 4 or 5 matches without doing it again, people will forget about it. But until then, it keeps the opponents on their toes. And hey, I'm a coach. Anything you can do to give your team a tiny bit of an edge, I love that. And I think Pat Noonan got that by switching it up. So that's my final thought. Well done, Pat.
Unless they listen to Cincinnati Soccer Talk and know that we doubt they'll go out with the back four. And thanks, Coach. Nick.
Well, final thought number 1, FCC, blue and orange striped jerseys. Make that happen down the road. Final thought number 2. I just kind of want to reiterate what I said on the show a couple weeks ago, in that we're going to see a lot of good and a lot of bad these first 2 months of the season. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important for us to continue having that patience, at least for a little bit. It's funny. I can't remember if it was Coach or Jose that mentioned the 2022 season. I get that sort of vibe from this team where there's just been so many changes that Pat Noonan kind of had to do a lot of trial and error to really see where all those pieces fit. I think we're going to see some of that over the next couple of weeks. I do think this is the best roster that FCC has ever had. And look, I'm not going to jump on the bandwagon of some other, national outlets and predicting, supporter shield this season or a deep playoff run or anything like that. But I do think that we're seeing signs that the team is moving in the right direction. And when they're 100%, I think this is going to be a very dangerous team.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No doubt. Nick, thanks for being on the show. It's good to have you back and getting your insight on the jerseys, especially tonight. So thanks for being here. Jose, how about your final thoughts?
Very happy with the win, of course, with Toronto. It is the best game we've seen them play. But again, I'm tempering my enthusiasm because Toronto is just not a good team. I mean, let's just say it. They're not a good team. But it was good to see the players continue to gel. I think this team is gelling faster than last year's team. I think there's signs of that. And if that continues, as you said, Nick, this team is going to be very dangerous. Now, against Tigres, again, the hostile crowd will be the first thing they have to overcome. Those players that have not been in a CONCACAF game, competitive game, it's going to be something different. FCC is going to have to take some risks because if they can get a win, I mean, that's the guarantee. You can just win the game outright. But if we can do a non-zero tie, then we go to penalty kicks and see what happens. But I think they're going to have to take some risks. I think they have the talent. It's just going to depend how well they adapt to that crowd and how physical Tigres comes out and whether or not Tigres has some of their injured players back.
Yeah. Great thought, Jose. Always good to have you on for your third or fourth or whatever it is. I know more than anything, we get a lot of, hey, I love Coach on the Monday night show. And next to Coach is, you need to get Jose on more often. Jose's great. So, Jose, thanks for being on. It's good.
Thank you. But I will say that the people that are watching are probably disappointed that Coach and I didn't get into a shouting match, like that
I'm
CNN
disappointed.
show, politics,
There's still
yell
time.
at each other.
He wasn't isolated. Was not isolated.
I don't know.
Oh man. Oh, this could be fun. See, we're stirring it up a little bit. We're going to get some of this tension going here in later episodes. Guys, let me my final thought just as we wrap up the show is playing this many matches in a row, this Saturday, Wednesday, Tuesday, whatever it is, right? With a team that is so new, has a way, it could go one of two ways. I think it can serve to galvanize the team because you're dealing with adversity. You're not getting the recovery days that you normally would. You're playing on tired legs. So it can galvanize the team, but I think it can exacerbate some of the frustrations that are there too. And I think as we look back at last season, I think maybe we saw some of that early on with this game after game after game with Cincinnati playing in the CONCACAF Champions Cup, playing early in the season. We saw some of the tensions rise between Bupenza and Lucho Acosta in those early matches that just seemed to grow. The tension seemed to grow as the season went on, and we all know how that ended. I don't think we have those players necessarily now. So I'm excited to see, what could be in these early, beyond this early part of the season. But I'm anticipating this team being galvanized and not a team that's coming away just frustrated with one another. Again, I don't think we're seeing that. So I'm excited to see where it goes. But it's something I've got my eyes on with this team moving forward. So we don't have guys pointing and yelling and screaming at each other on the match in midfield like we did at this point last season. So excited to see where it goes. Guys, once again, thanks for being here on Cincinnati Soccer Talk. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Give us a shout on social media. Let us know, what you think of the show and what you'd like us what you'd like to see more of here on the show. Send your questions to Coach on Patreon so he can address those in his new video segments of Talking Tactics. And we'll see you later this week.